When we take an action that we feel some resistance to, are we operating from the place of the mind or the body? There's a place for the mind and there's a place for the body. But people these days have a tendency to force action without realizing that underneath that comes regulation. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how emotional regulation is everything. I think people really underestimate how powerful emotional regulation is. In fact, we barely talk about it, we barely hear about it, we barely focus on it, don't we? I think people have a tendency to think that when they take an action, they are perfectly accountable for what happens in the moment. So they force. There's something they feel nervous about, uncomfortable, and they push and they force themselves using the mind. And this can work here and there. But if it's your default state, then you're probably going to get really stressed out. We can look at the West, and the West is stressed, right? I saw an amazing post the other day on Instagram which talked about how we worship the god of time, which is basically we expect you to be at a certain place at a certain time, and I'm going to drop everything to make that happen. So I'm going to push, I'm going to control. And I'm not saying we shouldn't use time effectively, but what I am saying is we often set this unnecessary pressure, which keeps us away from this present moment, this present now, and leaves us in some depiction of the moment. Also, I'm clinging to something in the future, or aversion to it, some fear, some paranoia, some inner agitation. And when we're in the mind, that's when we can really get trapped by the mind and what's occurring in the mind. If we take the burden off ourselves just a little bit and realize that the mind operates based on how the body feels, then we see that thoughts that arise are rising because the body is in a certain state of regulation. If we feel really good, we have better thoughts, more wholesome thoughts. Our mind works better, it operates better. This is all obvious stuff, yet when something happens in our lives, the first thing we don't think of is, hey, let's regulate the body. What we often think of is going into the mind, thinking, analyzing, probing. This is all beneficial sometimes, but often when we are dysregulated, the mind isn't operating properly. That higher order of thinking is off. And there's a lot of studies that show this. There's a lot of studies that show the impact of trauma and dysregulation on the nervous system, dysregulation of nervous system on the functional IQ. IQ goes down like 10 points, 20 points, right? If you're in a fight, flight, or freeze state, different trauma responses, your IQ is substantially lower. If you are in a fawn state, which basically means people-pleasing, which is how a lot of us operate in different social environments, well, instead of trying to just be confident, bro, just not be a people-pleaser, bro, actually realizing, wow, maybe there's some unsafety here in the body. And it's the body that needs that regulation to feel safe, to feel relaxed, to feel at ease, and to open up. And as the body opens up, the mind opens up, and thinking becomes more clear, more aligned. You start operating in a way that is better, and actually going into the resistance, it just starts to feel easier and easier. The resistances start to drop So before going into a situation that you have a lot of resistance to, instead of just diving in, you can think about maybe there's some regulation that I can do here. Diving into the body, feeling the body, relaxing the body, opening the body up, shaking out the tension, the tightness. This all does wonders. It's not all about coming up with the crazy ideas, the theories, the strategies, the techniques, the tools, doing more and more and more. Sometimes you need to do less. And what I've been constantly drawn back to is the massive benefit of regulating your nervous system. Which, by the way, most people aren't in a regulated state. So we don't really see it often. We think it's normal to be dysregulated. We don't have people talking about this stuff very often. When you can't outthink the thinking, when you can't control the thinking, the best thing to do is to just recognize that this is happening. And to shift back into what is something more deeper that I can feel into. And often it's the mind that is creating all these thoughts to keep us from feeling, because it's the feeling that can be so uncomfortable. It's a feeling that can make us feel like something's wrong. And so we think instead, maybe to run away from it, or maybe to come up with some solution. And maybe the solution works sometimes, but maybe it's not, right? And that's where being conscious of the patterns starts to come in. Look at what's occurring, the pattern, and actually cognitively understand and map that out. But if you're not there yet, if you don't have that regulation in the body, then cognitively you're fighting against yourself. That's what I've noticed in my life. And that's when actually shifting into regulation through tapping into the body and somatically feeling what needs to be felt, releasing what needs to be released. I think that's the path to achieving your goals and dreams. And it's a path that we ignore because we think that we can use a trick. But what I found in my life is actually just moving into the basics and starting off with relaxation, feeling safe in the body, feeling comfortable in the body, and using that safety, using that comfort to then create creativity, allowing creativity to flow through relaxation, right? You can't force creativity. So now we have creativity and playfulness and natural enjoyment. And that's when spontaneity can start to come online. When spontaneity can start to come online, then we can feel gratitude towards our experience. It's easier to feel gratitude towards our experience too. And so now we can start to open up ourselves and open up the body. And opening up ourselves, our body, and our actions all starts with the simple spark of relaxation and safety that comes from the body, deep inside the body. That's why I feel like it's so important to actually just focus on this regulation that I'm talking about. This emotional regulation really is a superpower, and it shouldn't be understated.